Okay. How you doing?
Pretty good yourself.
I'm just gonna need your help with like classroom control. I'll give you directions. I can use it. When kids come in, I want them to have seats there. Put stuff under their chairs. Okay. After I send this email, I need to run to the bathroom real quick.
Back in 5 minutes, I forgot. Throw me out in the car.
worries, man. So this is live on YouTube.
Okay.
So I need your help. I may ask you to do things. Really, when kids come in, we need them to sit. Just help me with the classroom management. It needs to be quiet in here.
Sure.
And we'll go from there.
Okay.
And then after that's done, I think you're relegated to me for most of the day with regards to I'm going to have you help me print some posters for our science fair, unless you're supposed to go other places.
I think they have me bouncing around, but
That's fine.
if not,
That's fine.
I
I'll
can
talk to
do
Sandy after this. I just think I jumped on the fact that I could use just an extra hand in the room.
it. Okay. Yeah, they didn't have me really filled out, so.
All right. All right, they'll come down in the next 5-10 minutes. You want a water?
Sounds
Thirsty?
good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. You have an education degree?
I'm working on it.
Yeah, where you at?
Right now, I'm looking for a program. I received a biology degree from Western, and I decided rather late that I wanted to go into education. So it didn't make sense to start all over and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I understand that.
So working on finding a program. Looking at University of Bridgeport is the big one. That seems to be where a lot of people suggest. So
Okay. At some points, I may ask you just to help me with your camera,
sure.
and it's on this, and all I would need you to do is just turn it so people could see, maybe move forward or backwards. That's it. Unfortunately, this camera, I'm not gonna have. I'll give directions for the teachers what to do. All right, here we go. It's the first time I've done this, so I'm just figuring out. I've been feeling good. I would shake your hand, but I went home sick yesterday, and my kids had a virus. I got a flu check yesterday. I'm good there.
There you go. Yeah.
And I don't want to, but I couldn't leave this team hanging with this project.
Appreciate
so, yeah, so don't take it personally.
Okay. Yeah. No worries.
So basically, we're working on desalinization of water.
All right.
Kids.
Oh, yeah.
Good morning. Whose class you from? You're Saints. Here's what I'd like you to do. Okay, bringing that down. Ooh, heavy. Have a seat up front. We can get started as we pull up. Go ahead and sit in this rows right here. These rows right here. Move this over just a little bit. There's 5 of you, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead. Have a seat. Or somebody sit right here. Girls, will you just slide that row this way a little bit? Now we are live right now on YouTube, so we just have to watch what we say. So if any of the teachers are watching, hi, Ms. Kintro's class, you may, or Ms. Pierce, sorry. How's everyone doing? Yeah, I don't want to get too close. I didn't feel so great. Okay. If you'll remind them as they come in to enter quietly and not to talk. All right. Set those materials there. Whose class is this? We are live right now. Come on in. All right. All you, who's in Miss Power's class? Raise your hands. Okay, the ones that are in Miss Power's class, come here. Just Miss Power's class. What I want you to do is fill in the front row in that seat there, please. Be careful, watch the cords. Whose class is this? Whose class is this? Who's in Miss Kindred? Those kids that are Miss Kindred. Okay. Fill in these rows right here. Whose class is this? Do me a favor, just set that right there for me, friend. You can all fill in here and then fill in right there. Can I get this row to fill in the front here? I need 2 people to move up. You 2 right there. Move up. I need 2 in here. Okay. We're gonna get started in just a few minutes.
I'm getting summoned elsewhere.
Say again?
I'm getting summoned elsewhere.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yep. No singing. We're live right now on YouTube, okay? I'm gonna go over some ground rules in a second, but I do ask that everyone just sits quietly while we work today, okay? We have to be patient. You don't really need anything right now. We'll probably move around the room in a bit to do some activities. I'm just gonna wait for, I think Miss Newman's class to come down and then we'll get started. I told them we'd start at 8 because everyone's taking attendance. Is everyone having a good Friday?
Yeah. Actually, no. I walked into
Okay.
the pole.
Well, I'm sorry. Hopefully your day will get better. I apologize that you walked. To make sure you feel any better, I went home sick yesterday afternoon and I'm still not feeling great. So I don't want to shake anyone's hand. But I felt like this was important for you guys. And I know that you've been working very hard on this unit. So I wanted to make sure I was here. And so we're going to learn some stuff today. Like I said, I'm just waiting for Miss Newman's class and we're going to get started. And let me just back up my presentation a little bit. While everyone's thinking, how many of us have ever been, while we're just sitting here, just without saying anything, how many of us have ever been to the beach before or the ocean? How many have ever had salt water in your mouth? Whether you wanted to or not, like it's not something we do. Okay, you put your hands on. So you know what the taste is like, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so think as we're waiting, just think of an adjective to describe like if you took like a mouthful of salt water. Yeah, that's a good gesture or emoji. Now let's put that into words. Is this Miss Newmanheimer's class? Come in quietly, and I want you to fill in this back row right here. I told them I would start the broadcast at 8. So I'm gonna give us a few more minutes here because I said I'd start it. I want to make sure if any of the teachers can hear me, if you could test the comment section to make sure that that's working. And if you let me know that you have us on, we'll get started as soon as I have that. Just sit right there, young man, please. Whose class are you from? Have a seat right there for me, please. Okay. Are you supposed to stay or are you just dropping that off?
I'm dropping that off.
You want to stay?
Why not?
All right, go ahead and have a seat. All right. If you have a bag on or a water bottle, just put it under your chair. We just need to be patient for a few minutes. This is a live broadcast. Okay. So while we're waiting, and since I have all the classes here, I think it is very important to a couple things to take the next couple minutes to address a few things. First, SR squared. Okay, safe, respectful, responsible. Now, this is a new venue for us here. In other words, a new way for us to help students learn about topics by doing like a live broadcast. Now, in this scenario, usually it wouldn't be like this. Sometimes it would be, but you're kind of like a studio audience right now, right? How many of us have ever seen like Jimmy Fallon, which shout out to Miss Powers and Miss Kinstriff, which I know you love. You know, any of the talk shows, right? There's a live studio audience. And before they begin, they remind the audience that this is on YouTube right now. People are listening. So we have to, that's why I bring up SR squared. We don't really have a policy of SR squared for this. So we need to be safe in the sense, just follow my directions. That's easy. The responsible, please stay seated unless I've given you directions. Okay. I'll try and get you up to move. All right. But the respectful piece here, I think, is the most important. This is live, and I'm not only talking to you, but please understand, I'm talking to your classmates. You just get to sit in a different environment as we go through this, and some of you may get to help me do some things, and we're going to go forward. And then in the next class, you guys will get to actually build something or try to solve a problem, okay? So it's really important, and this is the first time for all of us to do this, so I may ask at times for a student just to help me with this. The camera is on here. Even though we have all these fancy cameras, Mr. Newhousel has not yet figured out how to link those cameras where I could have somebody swiveling them to the live stream. It'll come. It's just, you have to learn, right? Just like everything. We learn and take steps. This is the second time I've ever done this before, all right? So if I make mistakes, I make mistakes, but I'm trying not to, okay? I try not to. So the only thing I ask out of you is just SR squared, safe, respectful, responsible, okay? No talking, please be attentive. If I direct your attention, there will be times, again, I'm gonna have some kids come up. I have some poster chart paper. We're gonna be doing some things around the room, okay? Does that make sense? All right, any questions before we begin? Yes, sir.
In the Project Soul, maybe that could be an acronym for Salinate All Loose Taste. Salinate All Loose Taste.
Very good. I like the way you start this off. But before we get to there, let's welcome all of our, hopefully we're ready. I think we're still a couple minutes early, but I like how you're thinking already, okay? And so as we're waiting for another 2 minutes, I told them we'd start at 8, and I'm going to start exactly at 8 because it wouldn't be fair to get into a lesson that starts early. It would be like if you showed up at the airport and the plane took off 2 minutes early. You'd be upset, right? Because sometimes we all get, how many of us have been on a plane or a train or a bus, right? We've all had to do, and you don't want,
Puked every time.
right? So we have a schedule, and we're almost there. But I do want to draw your attention. Some of the presentation is going to be up on the board here, okay? And I'll be standing up there talking. But if you need to see what I'm talking about, it'll be over here. You can keep your eyes on me because I'll be in the front here. It'll seem kind of weird, all right? But the teachers in the classrooms have this presentation as well, and I'm going to ask that they flip between the screens at times, okay? Also, I have a board here, all right? And I'll go over that in a second. Then I have the stage area where there's going to be a little bit of a demonstration. If I invite anyone up to help me, don't run, but please use the stairs. It's Friday. I want no broken ankles today. I would prefer that we all go home. I just want to go home and rest, okay?
My mandibles are already.
Here we go. This is like racing a mountain bike downhill for the first time and doing something scary. All right, but let's get started. Okay, have a seat. All right, I think it's time that we begin. Boys and girls from all the classrooms in 6 global studies, welcome to the broadcast room. Welcome to our first live broadcast of a lesson that we're going to try and do today. We've already talked about SR squared here. Teachers, just please remind your students about SR squared so that we at least are very respectful and responsible as this is going on. I've already reminded the students that this is our first time doing this, and we all know how scary it can be to do something for the first time. So anyways, good morning to everyone. Happy Friday. Thank you for joining us. So today we're going to move into another piece of the water scarcity curriculum. Now, real quick, everyone think, before I get into the presentation, what does water scarcity, if you're sitting in this room, and even if you're at home, I want you to think. We've spent since December talking about water scarcity. All I want you to do is think of 3 adjectives in your brain to describe water scarcity. And an adjective is a descriptive word for those that have trouble. Okay? Who can give me one adjective? Who would like to share out one adjective? What do you got?
Dirty.
Dirty.
Critical.
Critical.
Not a lot.
Not a lot. Not a. Okay, I think that could be interpreted different ways. Okay, and
Unhealthy.
unhealthy. Would you? I might use the word sad even. Would you agree? Yeah.
Yeah.
How many of us have ever gone without water for more than a couple hours and you're like parched? Yeah, everyone's hands. And I'm sure at home, I want you to think, or excuse me, not at home, in your classroom, I want you to think about that as well. So we've spent a lot of time. And as global citizens in 6th grade, that's what you're in the global studies program. We're trying to get you to become global citizens and understanding the world. And water scarcity is one of them. All right. But we're going to turn our attention a little bit. I heard the word dirty, and I know that you did those filters. How many enjoyed making filters and trying to purify the water? And I got some feedback from the teachers. They said they like that too. And in the future, you can give me, I'll ask for some feedback on how to improve it to make it better. But right now, if you enjoyed that, right? How many felt like they were successful? How many would have actually drank the water that they filtered?
It looked like pee.
How many would actually drink the water they purified? Okay, only a couple of you, but you would, right? You felt like you could be safe. Okay, you put your hands down. Well, we're going to take a different look today at a potential solution to some of the water issues that are around the world, and starting with places that are actually kind of close to us, being on the East Coast, and we'll talk about the West Coast, being next to what major water sources do you think I'm talking about? What major water sources are there in the world that we can't use or not using enough of that we could, you think?
The ocean.
Yeah, the ocean, right? What's in the ocean why don't we drink the water from the ocean? Yes, sir.
Because there's salt water in the ocean.
There is salt water in the ocean. Okay? And so we're going to go through a presentation, and this piece of the water the water scarcity unit is going to focus on desalinization. Okay, so we have a project called Project SALT, and it's going to take place over the next couple days, starting today. And then Monday, you're going to be doing some hands-on activity with a little bit follow-up on the next class, and then everything is going to come together. All the different things that you've done is going to come together for one last task for this group. Okay. And, hopefully now, even though I hope we're starting to try and think about how to solve our world's water problems. So I want to draw those people's attention that are at home to a board up here. And I'm going to ask the teachers, there's also a presentation. So for Project SALT, we have a couple things that we need to focus on. First off, we have some objectives. Since this is school, we always have to have learning objectives, and that's okay. As a ski instructor, when I taught skiing, I always had learning objectives for my students. We all have to learn something, right? Coach mountain biking. Anyways, if those kids here, you can draw your attention that in your classroom, your teacher has the presentation, and they may be able to click between the two to show you what I'm talking about, but our objectives are this. We want to identify, pronounce, and define key vocabulary associated with this part of the project. Okay, and I have those words listed up there, and I'll go to those in a moment. We want to describe what it means to desalinate water and why this process might be important to the water crisis around the world. That's another objective. We're trying to make a link here. And finally, this is the piece that most kids like, but get frustrated with, is you're going to apply some 21st century skills by problem solving and communicating in partnerships and working almost as a class. All right. So with that said, are there any questions on our objectives here? Pretty straightforward. I mean, you're probably like, we hear this all the time in your class, but I think it's important that we know. So before we begin, and I have it written up here on this board. Also, it's in the presentation. So students that are sitting here, the presentation, your teachers may have put it into Google Classroom, but I have on our whiteboard here, I'll get to the task in a moment, but we have 3 words that are really important for our learning in this process, and that we need to, you just hang in. Yep. that are important to understand so that as scientists, as citizens that are trying to solve a problem, we do it in a more efficient technical manner. So the 3 words that we have, and I've already defined them for you, is salinity. Everyone say the word salinity.
Salinity.
Turn to your neighbor, say salinity.
Salinity.
Turn to somebody behind you or around you and say salinity.
Salinity.
Okay, now, salinity. Now, we could spend a lot of time talking about maybe some of the root words. Does anyone hear a root word in salinity? And we're talking about salt water. Does anyone hear a root word that may help us figure out what salinity deals with? Yeah, well, you think we're dealing with salt. So salinity is the amount of salt measured in water. Now, I don't have time today, but there are different tests that scientists use to test for the amount of salt water in the water. And this is important, not just for humans. Anyone have an aquarium? Anyone have a saltwater aquarium? Those are really, do you have a saltwater aquarium? Saltwater aquariums are very, very hard to take care of because the amount of salt in them is extraordinarily important. Too much hurts the fish. Too little, they can't survive. Then we have our next word. It's pronounced desalinization. Everyone say that. Desalinization. Say it again.
Desalinization.
Say it one more time.
Desalinization.
Say it to a partner.
Desalinization.
All right. Now, desalinization is a process. There are different types of desalinization processes out there. Okay? But it is a technique or a method just to simply take the salt out of water. Okay? There are ways we can do it. And then the last word that I want us to know is potable water. Some people pronounce it potable. Potable water. And sometimes when you're at the park, you'll even see a sign that says not potable water, is potable water. If you go camping, everyone go to campgrounds. And when you have to go fill your water, and there's certain ones you use and certain ones you don't, right? For those kids that are shaking their heads, yes. Potable water means that it's safe for us to drink. That means it's clean. It's not dirty, but all the bacteria and all the things, the harmful things that can get in your tummy are not there. And so we can drink it. It may not taste great, and sometimes it smells. When I was in the military, we drank potable water all the time. And let me tell you, it smelled like sulfur, rotten eggs. And anyways, so those are our 3 words that we want to, by the end of this performance task, I want you to be able to talk with me or somebody with confidence that you know what those 3 words are and how to use them in a sentence. Okay? And I know that sounds simple, but it's important. It's important to, as scientists, as citizens, that we influence our lives with key vocabulary so we have an understanding. Okay? Does that you guys understand?
Yeah.
Let's roll. Where's my other paper? All right. So next up, we started to talk about this, but let's make a water scarcity connection here. So like I've said, I want you to, we started talking about adjectives, right, to describe the water scarcity, but I want you to actually think about 2 to 3 water issues that we face around the world. Specific water issues in a place. Now, I know that you've read a lot of articles. We've done a lot of research. Identify right now, everyone close your eyes and identify 2 places, 2 types of water issues from around the world. Think about it. You've spent all this time on this unit. You should at this point be able to choose at least 2. 2 places. How many remember Flint? Who can tell me what happened in Flint, Michigan? Right here.
The water was with lead, and so they.
Yeah, the water had lead in it and they couldn't drink it. Does anyone remember why? What happens if we drink water with lead in it? What happens if you drink water with lead in it? Do you remember?
Like you start getting sick.
Yeah, you get
vomiting.
sick, you get vomit.
And then, like, if you have kids, like, there's, like, diseases that would spread to your kids.
Very good. All right. And so, Flint, who can give me one more? Who can give me one more?
Africa.
What about in Africa? That's a big continent.
Well, the water in Africa, since they have like scarce water, and the water that they do have is very dirty, or like
Okay, so they have dirty water that's not only dirty to look at, but you use the word infected. So I assume from your research, you meant to say something with like bacteria, parasites. So how are these problems being solved around the world? How are these problems being solved? Like this has been some of the things we've worked on. Young lady back there.
Some organizations are giving products that can help clean water.
So some organizations are making products that can clean water, such as what? Like what would be a simple word that we would use to talk about? Yeah, making filters. Anyone heard of the Life Straw? How many have heard of the Life Straw, right? Who can tell me what the Life Straw does? What does the Life Straw do right there?
It's like an invention. It's like a straw, and then you open the top and the bottom, and then it filters the water as you drink out of it.
Yep. Yeah, and it filters the water so you can drink directly from it. Cleans it. You know, again, taste is something weird. When I was in the military, we used to put iodine tablets in our water. Killed all the bacteria. It does not taste great, but it's fine. It won't hurt you. And then, hey, we started this, and I think we can quickly make this connection. How do you think salt water is going to connect to this? We started to hint on this already, but what? How does salt water connect to this? Think about that for a second. We're doing a project with salinity, but yet you're bringing up Africa. Somebody else bring up Flint, Michigan. So how does salt water help this issue? How does salt water, what does it have to do? How about you right there? What do you think? What do you think the connection is?
That people can drink the salt water.
The people might be able to drink the salt water. How many might agree with that? Why do you think that might be true? What's one of our vocabulary words that we are learning today that may make that statement true? Right there, Mr. Hurley. What word? Which of those three words right here, salinity, desalinization, or potable water, do you think is the real connection between salt water and water crises?
Desalination.
Who can tell me what desalination is again, real quick?
The process of taking salt out of the water.
Process of taking salt out of the water. All right, outstanding. Any questions thus far? All right, now listen. So let's quickly talk about the saltwater connection and just refresh or just recap what everyone said. First, so in the beginning of our presentation, we said that nearly 96, and we didn't give a percent, but we said a lot of the earth was covered in water. But you know how much is? Almost 96.5%. That means only 3.5% of the water on earth is fresh. Has anyone ever been to the Great Lakes before? Lake Michigan, Lake Superior, Lake Huron, Lake Erie. How many have ever been to a really big lake that you can't see across and it's fresh water? Raise your hand. Take all those water sources around the world and put them together and it's still only 3%. I mean, that's how big our oceans and deep our oceans are. I mean, just let that sink in. That's crazy. It's a lot of water, right? But the oceans are made of salt. And we know as humans, we can't drink it. And because we don't have time, we can't necessarily get into the science of why we can't drink it. But understand if we do drink too much of it, we end up with things like kidney failure. Most of you would end up throwing up. It would actually dehydrate you. And it does some other things. So we just don't drink salt water. And plus, when it all came in, I asked how many have had salt water in your mouth. Raise your hand. And a few of you made faces like, I probably should do that better on YouTube. All right. So, and then lastly, we talked about how desalinization is the removal of it. So we have this water crisis. We started talking about Flint in Africa, but there is areas that the desalinization may help sooner. How many know about what's going on in California that's happened in the past few months in California and maybe a cause of it? Right there, Mr. Westside.
The California fires.
The California forest fires. What's one of the major causes of the forest fires? Does anyone know? In the back?
I think the dryness.
The dryness. Does anyone know a vocabulary word? We're not going to add it, but a word to describe a period of dryness is known as what? As a drought. So California is going through a drought. And it's actually pretty severe. When I lived in Arizona, and I lived there for about 20 years, it was going through a drought. And I lived in the mountains, and we used to get 300-400 inches of snow a year. And people's like, that's a lot. It is. It's a lot to ski in. However, from March to nearly October, there was very little precipitation. I went 330 days one year with all sunshine, not even clouds in the sky. That's a long time, and it gets hot. Okay, so we're gonna watch a quick video. The kids in the classroom, I'm gonna ask you to turn your bodies in a moment. I'm gonna turn off the lights up here, and it says, as we're watching it, they're gonna give different methods to desalinate water. I just want you to try and remember two. And then there are problems with trying to desalinate. Now, those students that are in the classroom, I ask that if the teacher could, at this time, you're going to click over to the presentation. You're going to show the video. And the video is approximately 5 minutes long. And at 8:21, we will come back together to finish our live broadcast and go through some demonstrations. I will leave the live broadcast running, but I am going to play the video. So I'm going to turn off the lights and turn down the sound in here so you don't get the backfeed. So if that's okay, I'm going to start that. Can I ask that one of you just flip off those lights right there?
Maybe you've heard that California has been having some water trouble lately. And by lately, I mean for the past 5 years. California is experiencing a serious drought, and if it continues, it could cause permanent damage to its ecosystems, threaten its precious freshwater resources, and ruin the state's many, many crops. But maybe you're thinking, how can a state that shares 1,350 kilometers of coastline with an ocean be out of water? Well, ocean water is full of salt, that's how. But it doesn't have to stay that way, because there's a process called desalination, which removes the salt from the seawater to make it drinkable. It's already used in some parts of the world on a large scale, so now both scientists and citizens are wondering whether desal, as it's sometimes called, can help California out of its drought. So let's take a look at how desalination currently works. There are 5 different methods used in facilities around the world to extract pure water from seawater. But over 80%...
I'm just going to pause it. They gave 4 right here. Try and remember 2. So I'll go through these. Electrodialysis. You could just say distillation. Vapor osmosis. Okay, that's reverse osmosis, vapor compression. But if you remember osmosis, compression, distillation, dialysis. Those are the 4 key terms to try and remember. Those are 4 of the processes, okay? Try and remember 2 if you can. I'm gonna keep it going.
Desalinated water is produced by just 2 of these methods. They are known as reverse osmosis and multi-stage flash. Reverse osmosis uses pressure to remove salt, other minerals, and microbes from seawater. The water is pumped through a bunch of semi-permeable membranes, which contain tiny pores that let water molecules pass through, but filter out other particles if they're too big or charged. The water that gets forced through the membranes becomes usable freshwater. But the leftover water is just so salty and full of other junk that it's too expensive to extract any more freshwater, so it's sent off to a separate treatment plant. This extremely salt-saturated water is known as concentrate, or brine. In a multi-stage flash, seawater is brought to a...
Okay, so what's one of the problems that they just identified with using that technique? There's something that's a byproduct. Think about what they just said. Okay, I'm going to keep moving forward. I know some of you did.
As it travels through a series of chambers, creating some water vapor and leaving the dissolved salts in a liquid. Fresh water is collected as the water vapor rises to the top of these chambers and condenses. Then the leftover brine is either recycled in other parts of the system or disposed of somehow. These technologies have been effectively used in thirsty countries around the world. For example, the Ras Al Khair desalination plant in Saudi Arabia uses both reverse osmosis and multi-stage flash processes. It's capable of pumping out about 1 million cubic meters of desalinated water every day. In Israel, meanwhile, Sarik desalination plant uses reverse osmosis exclusively and can supply around 620,000 cubic meters of fresh water per day to the country's water system. So why don't we use this stuff to solve California's drought problems? Well, even the biggest desal plants in the world are only supplemental. They don't make enough water to support an entire population. The Carlsbad desalination plant in California, for instance, is helping produce fresh water through reverse osmosis, but at best, it provides less than 10% of regional water demand. Desalinating seawater can also be twice as expensive as treating other water sources like rainwater wastewater. On a large scale, most of that expense comes from the energy that's needed to heat the water or apply pressure to it. According to some estimates, it takes about $25,000 worth of electricity per month to produce enough desal water for only 1,200 homes. Plus, there's the problem of how to process all that leftover
He's giving
brine. You can't
problems,
just
so
dump it
pay
back into
attention.
the
He's
ocean
giving
because the extreme
problems.
levels of salt have been shown to damage fish, coral, and seagrass. Finally, there are logistics to consider. Most of California's water is used for agriculture, but the state's growers would be largely unaffected by any effort to desalinate seawater. Why?
Right.
Because most California farms are inland, not even close to the ocean, which is generally where you'd want to put a desalination plant. So, to help quench California's thirst, we're going to have to try new desal technologies. One promising technique scientists are developing in California is solar desalination, which harnesses the thermal energy of the sun to power a desalination plant. An example of this would be a multiple effect distillation plant, which is a lot like multi-stage flash, except the steam from the first stage is used to boil water in the second stage, and the steam from the second stage is used to boil water in the third stage, and so on. Solar desal may be able to make clean water at lower costs than conventional desal, and it could produce less brine. Some companies even estimate around 93% of the salt water being turned into fresh water. For now, though, the costs and logistical problems of desalinating seawater are just too big to solve problems like the California drought. But with more research and ingenuity, desal plants could provide at least some relief to drought-stricken communities everywhere. Thanks for watching this episode of SciShow, brought to you by our patrons on Patreon. If you want to help support the show, just go to patreon.com/scishow. And don't forget to go to youtube.com/scishow and subscribe. Get ready for next.
All right. So hopefully everyone's back. I think that took a couple minutes longer. Real quick, who can remember one of the methods that they talked about in that video and in the classroom at home? Even if you want to try and use the comments, hopefully it's working. Maybe have your teacher who can cite one of the methods that was used right there. Compression, right? They use some sort of compression, which turns into osmosis, right? And push it through something, don't they? What else do they use?
Multiple effects
Dialysis, multiple effects dialysis. And then what they keep doing is it's like dialysis with blood in you. If you have like a sickness, they'll do dialysis, and all it does is clean it. And it's like through a series of filters that happens. Distillation. And we're going to use a variant of that today. And that's heating water and collecting the vapor that comes back from it. And that's essentially what we're going to do. And one more.
Stage flash.
Multiple stage flash. And that goes into the distillation. It's like that. It's using the heating of the water. And that's what we're going to talk about next. However, I did ask us, there are several problems with trying to desalinate water. And they're serious. So this is why it hasn't necessarily been done yet. But it doesn't sound like it's impossible. We just need to keep working on it. What are some of the problems that we face with desalination right there?
It's extremely expensive and it only helps about 1,000 houses.
Yeah, it's really expensive and it still only helps a small amount of houses. What else?
It creates a lot of brine.
Some methods have that byproduct of brine, and brine is super. Has anyone ever had a brine shrimp or a brine turkey before? Anyone, when mom, maybe for Thanksgiving or somebody's cooked it, and you hear that term brining some meat? That's usually cut. You've ever heard that before? It's covering in salt, essentially, a saltwater mix. Very concentrated, and it's not good. Well, it's good when it's cooked, but you can't drink it all the time. One last thing. What's another problem right there?
I just have a question.
Go ahead.
How is salt in the water different from salt that we have?
The amounts that we take, it's still the same. We can find salt in different places in the world, and there are different chemical compositions. And you are right. Somebody in the class asked, how is salt in the water different than salt that we eat every day? And some of us are very well aware that we put salt in everything in our food. But the amounts of salt that we put in our food are measured in milligrams, very, very small amounts. So we only put, even if it seems like a lot, but when you drink water that's salt laden, the concentration is much higher, and it just doesn't affect. If we ate too much salt, we would have problems, but you'd have to like take the whole container and eat it. Does that make sense? Okay, real quick, what is another problem with desalinated water? We talked about it costs expensive. We talked about that there's a byproduct. What's one last thing right there?
It harms like sea life and seagrass.
Yeah, if you take that brine and you just dump it back in the ocean, it can ruin ecosystems. The other thing that was brought up was the energy taken to heat to make the desalination work. That is the real question. We're wasting energy to heat it. I think of this when I was a kid, and actually I learned this again in the Army, was that if you're in the winter and it's snowing out, right, and you're thirsty, okay, how many think you could just pick up the snow and eat it because it's made of water? It seems logical, doesn't it? Seems fair. I would say yes. I would say yes too. I used to think that. That snow won't hurt you. Yeah, it may not be filtered, but it won't hurt you. But do you know why it's not going to help you? Your body takes too much heat to warm it up to a point where it's usable. So you waste more energy trying to give yourself water than if you just didn't eat the snow. So the same kind of ideas are with desalination. Does that make sense? We use a lot more energy than it gives us. That's why we only get a few houses worth of water. All right, moving forward though, we're going to go into a little bit of a demonstration, and I want to show you some techniques. We've talked about ways that are desalination. We talked about distillation. We talked about osmosis. I'm going to ask, Jackson, can I get you to turn on the lights for me? I'm going to maybe call up some kids in a few minutes, but I want to go over a technique that is very simple but does not produce a lot of water. And we're going to have to do some problem solving in a bit to help this. Okay? So, up here, you will find that I have some water that I made into salt water. Okay? And we talked about different processes in which we can get the salt that I poured. I took the household salt. And if you were to put your finger in there and taste that, it's pretty salty and you don't really want to drink it. Okay? And I'm not going to ask everyone to come up. Okay? But if you don't believe me, I'll pour more in each of them. Okay? And so I have 4 different types up here. Now we talked about this idea of distillation. And in distillation, there are some words that you may have heard in science. I don't know if you've gotten to it. How many of us have heard the word evaporation before? How many of us have heard the word condensation? Good. When we distill something, we are using the process of evaporation and condensation to harvest the byproduct. And in this case, it'll be the water. Just gonna pour some in here. You can agree. Would you say you all saw me pour salt in there? Do another taste test. Oh, that's definitely salty. All right. In distillation, okay, they talk about the process of using heat. Now, here at school, we have to consider our heat sources. So what we're going to do is, and this is going to play an important role into a task that you're doing later, but we're going to take each of these beakers. We're going to cover them with a little plastic wrap. Okay, I'm going to seal off the top. Now, teachers, when you get your bins, just to FYI, and kids in here, and this you could show off to your mom for my cookers in here, my bakers. My dad worked in packaging. I learned this at a very early age. Most bins that you get, if you press in the inside flaps, there's a little perforated thing, and it helps hold in a little roll. So if you just press that in, just a little side note. So anyways, I'm going to pull off some plastic, and I'm going to cover each one. And I'm just going to cover it firmly. Okay. Here. Put this one right here. Okay. Put this one right here. gonna put this one on here. Okay, so just like any good scientist, we're gonna experiment with something, and so one of these is gonna be control. It's not gonna go on any heat. We're gonna explore how heat can help us with desalinization and how the process of distillation and condensation and evaporation, all those terms that all of you raised your hands on. So nice job to all those science teachers out there. I know you may not be watching, but good job. Is we're going to apply different forms of heat. All right. And what's going to happen is what do you think happens when I heat the water up? Who can tell me? Right there next to the young lady in pink. What do you think is going to happen to water when it heats up?
Whitney?
Yeah, right there in the gray, right there, young lady. No, perfect. Right there, striped sweatshirt, red pants. Okay, so you say it'll evaporate. What else? We have some other terms.
It's gonna boil.
Might boil.
The bad particles will burn off.
Bad particles might burn off. Okay, maybe we have to adjust the vocabulary. I think I get what you're saying.
Oh, there'll be droplets.
So you think that, what do we call those droplets? What are those droplets going to be called? Right there in the blue. We all raised our hand. I asked you just a moment ago about two terms, evaporation and condensation. Those little droplets of water are called what? Are they evaporated? Or is that evaporation or condensation? Think about that for a second. Think about it. Those little droplets of water that you said that are going to form on the top of our plastic, is that evaporation or condensation? Just the little droplets, not talking about the process. Early, what do you think?
I think it's gonna be evaporation.
So you think that the droplets are called evaporation?
Mm.
What do you think in the pink?
I think it's called condensation.
It is called condensation, and the process is evaporation. It's changing our water into a gas, back into a solid again, or back into a liquid through condensation. Okay. Now I'm going to ask. We're gonna explore how heat in different ways can help us produce this condensation. All right. Here's our control. I have a hot plate that I'm going to turn on, and I am going to put it at 100 degrees Celsius. So I'm going to ask no one to touch this. Okay. Then, can I get somebody that wants to come up? I have a heat gun. Okay. And they're going to take the heat gun, but they can't get it too close because it'll melt the plastic. You're going to take the heat gun, and turn it on, and you're just going to hold it around here. How about the young man right there? And I'll give some terms. So I just want you to stand right here and hold it right there. Your job is to keep an eye on this to make sure nothing happens. I need another student from this side to help us with our light. Okay, here's what I need you to do. I want you to take, and you're going to turn on this light, and I want you to place it so the beam isn't too close, but it's directed to that. Can you do that? All right. While this is happening, we have 3 of our students up here helping us out, and we're using 3 different formats to try and make our water condensed. I'll try and get us closer if I can. The first method is we are using a light. So everyone think to themselves, what natural source do we have that may provide us a method of doing this? Just think, don't say it. But what is this maybe replicating? Okay, think about that. Just think about it. We then have this hot plate, right? Stove at home, right? And somebody said it's going to boil the water. I think somebody said, cooking pasta. And your job is to make sure that stays at 100. So that knob, just keep it at 100, okay? And then we have our friend over here that is holding a heat gun or a hair dryer. I'll hold it. And so we have different sources that actually come to us naturally. We have light from where? Sun. We have heat that comes from underground, the geothermal underneath the earth. If possible, we can harness that. There are homes now that are built harnessing that earth's power to heat the floors in their house. And then What happens to wind when it's heated up by the sun? It gets hot, right about here. All right, now you can see as we're doing this, you can come a little bit closer. I want this group up here, you guys just stand right here. I'm gonna hold this for a second. I want everyone to make a single file line and come over here, and I want you to walk past all three and just make an observation about what you see currently happening there. See, we're already burned through. Hold that. You got the heat gun too close to. All right, get that heat gun back up here. Right here. All right. So as you come by, I want you to make observations. Do you notice any drops of water? And we'll just make some circles for the next couple minutes. Go ahead and observe and just make a train and going by. Walking by and then seeing what you observe. We got to keep this away. We're burning through it. You might not be able to use the heat gun. Try that again, though. Okay, do that. Does anyone notice anything happening? Let's turn this one off. Right there. You can start seeing, look on the sides. Start noticing on the sides and the top. Don't be afraid to get too close. Just don't touch. Should have had this going earlier. You guys are walking by awfully fast. Take the time to be a scientist and look. See, you start to see some drops of water starting to form. Take turns. Here, why don't you look? I got it. Here, you can hold it. Who hasn't had a chance to hold it? Yeah, we'll all take turns. Keep it. Let's get it right around there, maybe. Try to keep away from the plastic. No, you're good. You're good. You're good. Here, keep walking. You guys move through. You can start to smell. Who smells like? You can almost smell it, can't you? Smell sugar. Anything happening here? I'm getting some drops up there. Starting to get it up here. Starting to get some up here too. Just keep it going, yeah. All right, I'm gonna ask everyone to have a seat. I'm gonna hold this. I'm gonna keep these going because we only have about 20 minutes left of class, and I need to give us a chance to finish this presentation. And I apologize that this is just sometimes how science goes. That it didn't happen as fast enough. Can I get you just to hold this here while I go through, and then we'll switch out with somebody else in a second. Just keep it right about there. So as we are going through this, so we put our salt water under different light sources, and we're waiting for what we call condensation, as some of our friends have pointed out. Now, that condensated water, do you think that water is going to be salty or fresh?
Well, I think it's gonna be fresh because I saw all the salt at the bottom.
Okay, so you think it's going to be fresh because the salt's at the bottom.
Yes, because the salt
Say it nice and loud.
I think it's gonna be fresh because the salt and the
So one-eye students over here think that the water that comes to the top, the condensation, the little droplets of water that we're hoping to form, which we're just starting to get there, on the top here, because this is salt water, they're hoping that it's going to become fresh. And you can start seeing on the sides here, we even have little droplets of water. Now, for the sake of time, and by the end of class, hopefully we can show you some product. Why don't you pass that off to another student to hold, and we'll do boy, girl, and then another student. We'll be able to show you the fruits of our labor and be able to taste some fresh water. Now, with that said, I'm going to ask for, we're gonna jump into our project while this is all our demonstration still going on. So, we have a performance task for you. And you can see this takes time, doesn't it? It just doesn't happen, does it? Right? So here's our scenario. If I can draw everyone's attention onto the board as I read this, we'll come back to this. Teachers, if you want to put on, and you can keep the live stream going on in the background so you can listen. But our scenario is this. The 6th grade Global Studies program from WSMSA have become stranded on a deserted island. Desert island. Okay? They became stranded when their ship from the Maritime Aquarium crashed. The delightful 3-hour cruise, throw out to Gilligan's Island, too young for that, has now become a trip of survival. Here's our task. The ship has plenty of food to survive for several days. We don't have to worry about food, but the problem is water, okay? And so we have to find a way to get water. And so a plan is hatched by you very bright students from WSMSA to find a way to take the salt water that's around our ship in the area and desalinate it so that we have enough to drink, okay? As best as we can. So everyone right now, think. I'm asking us to identify the problem. What is the problem we are trying to solve in this performance task? And it may take a couple of sentences to state it. Everyone think right now, turn and talk to a neighbor and tell them what you think the problem is. You can tell me. To do what? Yeah, because got it. If I call it, you say it. All right, who wants to share? What is the problem? What is the problem we're trying to solve? If you want to, yeah. Does somebody else want to come up and hold that for a few minutes? What is the problem that we're trying to solve? Who can help me? What is the problem that we have? I keep calling on this side. Let me get some other kids in here that I haven't called on. Somebody new. Somebody new. I see the same kids raising their hand. What's the problem we're trying to solve? Yes.
To make ocean water clean to drink it.
Okay, so part of the problem is we have to make the ocean water clean to drink it, but why do we need to do that? There's something else that goes along with the problem for us. Right there. So the reason that we have to desalinate is because we're stranded because our ship crashed and we need to survive. Okay? How are we looking over here? And you can start seeing, as this starts heating up real quick without taking it too far off, you can start seeing all the little bubbles coming in, and you can start seeing it here. I don't want to pull it away for too long. Yeah, nice job. See those bubbles? All right, we're getting to a point now. With that being said, here's our scenario continued. So we had you students scavenge the island. You went on the boat in the island and you found some materials. And it was decided with these materials, okay, that you are going to try and take salty water. That's why I had you bring the 5-gallon buckets down. All right. And you're going to try and at least get enough water for you to drink a little bit of, because you got to survive. The materials, unfortunately, are, they're not unfortunately, are this. We have a red 16-ounce cup, an 8-ounce cup, a straw, and some tape. Now, we haven't gotten a lot into this design process, but here's something I want to point out. And the reason that I'm giving you different supplies is because what you need to start thinking about to solve this is when all this water droplets that are forming on the side condensate to the top, that's water we can drink. But how are we going to get that water for us to drink? Oh, and by the way, each group will get plastic wrap, cover the top. So your job is going to be twofold. You're going to work with a partner using those materials to try and create a system to take salty water, allow it to heat up and desalinate, but then when the fresh water collects at the top and maybe rains down, you collect it somehow. Okay? There is a student in 7th grade, and I think his project is not here, that is doing this for his project, but he used a bottle like this, and I don't have enough for everyone. He cut out the bottom, just right up here, and put another cup on the inside of that. Filled it with salt water to here, let it heat up, condensated on the top, it rained down into the... Yeah, go ahead and switch out. Somebody else want to do it for a second? Yeah, let's get somebody on this side. You've been helpful today. Come on over. All right. So what you're going to have to do is you are going to have to develop a system not only to condensate it, you are also going to have to develop a system to collect that water. All right. And so that is the goal. And that's going to be a challenging goal because you can see through this amount of time, and we've already been letting this go for a few minutes, 10 minutes, under sunlight, under heated. This is at now 200 and we have it at 300 degrees Celsius, which is fairly hot. It's not quite boiling yet, or it's not boiling the water yet. And we have this that's probably, if I put a thermometer on it, it's probably about 200 degrees as well. And so you can see this takes time. This is why this has been such a hard issue. And it's going to be a challenging task. And I will provide in each classroom, I'll give us some lights to help replicate, and I can bring in some hair dryers as well as part of the problem-solving process, okay? Because you need a way to think about how to heat up the water efficiently. But once it's heated, we're almost there, bud. Once it's heated, how do we collect it? And that's the big thing, and I wish I could show it to you right now. Questions so far? All right. We only have 10 minutes left, so I'm going to kind of fast forward, and we're going to have to pick up the next step in class next time. You'll do it in your own classrooms because I'm going to send you guys back with some materials to take to your teachers. But before we get there, let's finish out with this. So the next time that we get together, or you get together with your class, you can get right into the problem solving. We don't have to go through all the background again. We want to start developing our system. But good engineers, good problem solvers, take a moment, they step back, and they plan. They don't just jump into it. Look, we're stranded on an island, and if we waste these materials, they're gone, right? So, first off, we've already talked about the big problem. Now we have to talk about identifying the problems in our design. What are two things that I mentioned that we're going to have to consider to help us accomplish our task? There's two major things that we're going to have to think about. What's one of them? Right there. Okay, so a way to capture the fresh water is what you're saying? Yeah, you're going to have to figure a way to capture it. Again, once the condensation goes, and you can start seeing it's developing at the top here. I don't know if you can, how well you can see that. But it's starting to come at the top, and you just get these little water droplets, and over time, this whole thing will be covered. Think about how many have gotten out of the shower after it's really hot and the mirror is all steamed up? Condensation, right? Now, we have to consider how to capture that water using these materials. What's the other thing? So it's the capture. What's the other thing? You can see I gave us 3 different ways in which to try to heat the water. What do you think we're going to have to consider when we're doing this?
What heat source will we use?
Heat source and location, right? Where are we going to put these so our heat source works? Because clearly I don't think the sun's going to be warm enough right now. We have a very bright light on this one and it's still not going just yet. So we may have to design these and leave these for a couple days to test them. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And so the next time we get together, you know that 2 of your engineering problems that you're going to have to figure out is how, when you get your condensation, and you can see again, it's starting to develop here, and I'm sorry for our viewers that are live that you don't get to see it, but some of you can probably see it starting to build here. How many think they can see that? And I'll have you walk through in just a moment. Is how to capture, right? In what way is best for us to heat it, to capture that, okay? And then, so you're gonna have to talk about that. And that means when you guys come back next time, you guys are gonna have to brainstorm your solutions. And what that means is when you get your materials next class, you have to take time and spend 5 minutes and saying, how can we use these? Not just like start jumping in and the first idea you hear is the best. Sometimes it is, and just because it's first doesn't make it the best. But brainstorming for me is very important and you have to take time to think about it. Then, before you even do anything else, then we have to diagram what we're gonna do. And this is important. So you have a clear step-by-step understanding of what you're building, what pieces and where you're gonna put it, okay? So again, just to repeat, and because I want to go over the materials again, you're gonna get a cup like this, 8 ounce, 16 ounce, a straw. Each group will be given some plastic wrap by their teacher. Teachers, I have a box for you. Each group will also get a roll of masking tape, each class. And then the teacher, I ask that you can give them about 3 meters and you can hang it on the wall. And you can use that however you want to seal off, use it as a way. But before you start building, how many of us do you think, since you're not gonna do this money, is anyone gonna maybe take a moment to see if they can't think of something online over the weekend? Does anyone think they might try to find the way? Might be interesting. I'm curious, out of the 5 classes that are in here, which class, not just group, which class, and this is the challenge to all five of you, which class can produce the most fresh water when it's done? We have a village to survive. Villages work together. Community works together. How many agree with that? Everyone's raising their hand in here. And I hope you at home agree with that as well. So the next time we meet, when you come to your classrooms, we're gonna pick up with the same presentation. You're gonna finish off with the brainstorming and diagramming. We're gonna review the problems so we just have them in our head, okay? You're gonna construct, and then we're gonna set it up. And then that means we're gonna have to wait a couple days, probably under the lights. And then we come back the next class and we'll make our observations and see what we did. How many are excited to at least try it? Yeah, I'll be honest, I'm a little nervous because it might be a little frustrating. I mean, you can see we waited for a bit, but now you can see, if you notice, this is that condensation we're talking about right here all along. Does everyone see that? And it'll start collecting on the top of the saran wrap here. But how do I get that water so I can drink it so it doesn't fall back into my salty water? Does that make sense? Because if it goes back in there, because somebody's right. I think you said there's a chemical. When it heats up and evaporates, the salt separates from the hydrogen and the oxygen. They separate chemically. All right? And so they're not attached when it comes up here. But when it goes back in, that salt's still there. Didn't disappear. That make sense? Any questions so far? Yes, sir.
I was thinking that maybe you should cut a little hole in cups, and the straw should be connecting them to.
Well, I think you're going to have to discuss that. I bet there's kids already thinking, and so we're not going to discuss it. We're going to stop for now. We're going to do the pledge, and then I'm going to dismiss you guys. So everyone stand for the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please pause for a moment of silence.
Go ahead and have a seat. Let's listen to the announcements, then I'll dismiss. For our viewers at home, I'm going to end the broadcast. Teachers, I will send those students back. I will probably have to deliver the
Good
supplies
morning,
for
Westside.
you.
Attention,
And I will
current
follow up
sixth
with you at
and
the end of the day.
eighth
Thank you
grade
very
students,
much
if
for
you are
everyone's patience and
interested
time. I
in
hope you guys
the
enjoyed today's
frequently
broadcast.
access
I look forward to
programs
feedback.
of
Thanks,
Upward
everyone.
Bound
Bye.
Excel.
Happy Friday.
Learners are in the main office.